celestis, Satana malios que spiritus malignos, via perditionem animarum, pervagantur in mundo divina virtute.
Good evening, everybody. If someone could give me a thumbs up in the comments section that you can hear me okay, that would be very useful. Right, let's just get this populated. We've got some good numbers in the last couple of months. Very, very impressive stuff, guys. A massive thank you to everyone supporting the mission and also this show as well. We have our first thumbs up. Thanks be to God. Blessed be the holy and undivided Trinity, now and forevermore. Amen. Just got a little bit of overlap with some music that's coming through. Which should have died down by now. Let's try that again. Blessed be the holy and undivided Trinity, now and forevermore. Amen. Peace be with you, my brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Tenconi Towers, episode 26 of Tenconi Talks, live and direct from HQ, aka the bunker. How is it Wednesday once again? Truly, truly head-spinning stuff. As ever, discussing what Christian nationalism means and how you can understand the mission and also go on to evangelize your brothers and sisters with regards to what it means to take our country back. How do we take our country back? It's no good if you understand it and then don't tell anyone. Once you understand it, you must then go and tell other people. It is time for tonight's talking points as we ask, how do we or even can we block the communists in Makerfield? Now, when by-elections occur, a lot of the time, naturally, you, me, we may well have traveled to various different regions, but you're not going to necessarily know the name of the constituency. You've potentially gone through it. Maybe you've stayed the night. You've gone through it via train, for example. So you might have seen the signpost and think, Makerfield. I've never been to Makerfield. I've traveled an awful lot of the north of England. I've never been to Makerfield. People don't know about these areas, and the by-election comes up, the by-election in Gorton and Denton. Now everyone knows about Gorton and Denton. That finally, Gorton and Denton was very much put on the map in that by-election episode that we had. Runcorn, another example, which I think was towards the end of last year, and now Makerfield. So tonight's episode, Patriots, for those of you that don't know, we're going to be talking about who the candidates are that we know of, and also the candidates that we don't know of by the parties that are evidently going to put a candidate forward. And I'm going to be talking with you about those candidates and giving you an overview of the parties, putting them forward, and the candidates themselves, and also the demographic data with regards to Makerfield. And then I'm going to conclude by explaining a little bit about something that comes up in British politics all the time, which is exhausting because, and that thing is called splitting the vote, because when that happens, or when that subject comes up, the front runners and those going for gold or going for glory, they don't care about splitting the vote, because they have this thing called momentum. The front runners always have momentum. In British politics, it's always the way. They've got the momentum. They're going for gold. First past the post system, British steel, stiff upper lip. They're going for gold. And you can't tell. It could be anyone. It could be any party. It could be any leader. You can't tell them otherwise, because in a first past the post system, there's this thing that the British have got a pitch perfect ear for it. And they know it when they see it. There's that momentum, a groundswell game, street game, online now, obviously in the digital world. But there is this thing called momentum, and people back horses where they look at the race card, they look at the race form, and they go, "Oh yeah, they will." That shows that particular piece of success, or that winning. Or people aren't silly; they understand, and of course, the leaders of parties like that know that as well. But there's a flip side to that coin. When you have an overcrowded space where the leaders of certain parties in British politics are saying, we are playing the long game, because they believe that if they appear moderate and liberal in the middle, in the center, which is what Britain has been politically, socially, economically for so very long, yes, susceptible to a far left takeover, but essentially that's what Britain's known for, is liberalism and Britain are synonymous. The idea is that behind the mindset of some political leaders, they are playing what they call the long game, and no one really knows the truth about that side of things, because it doesn't matter what moves they do or don't make. Ultimately, it's only the proof. The proof is only in the winning. So we've got a dynamic coming up, which we're going to explore tonight, Patriots, which is so important. The horse with the momentum and that is going for glory doesn't care about splitting the vote. The horse that isn't going for glory, but is potentially a little bit more reserved, doesn't have the momentum, but is still wanting to take part, is potentially saying you'll split the vote in an overcrowded space, whether that's on the left or on the right. So on the left, you've got the Reds, Labour, the Greens, the Yellows, the Lib Dems, and on the centre, right, whatever you want to call it, you've got Nigel, who is or isn't playing a long game. Again, it's very unlikely that he is, but again, he might be. You've also got Advance UK by Ben Habib. You've got UKIP, which is slightly further to the right, Christian nationalism, I'd argue. And then you have Rupert Lowe, Restore, which a lot of it, we all share the same policies. We all know who came out with them first. Just get that in there. Summer 2024. But does that make sense, guys? You've got this crowded space on the right. And if everyone's going to chuck a candidate in there, the party which is saying we're going for glory, they don't care about splitting the votes. It makes absolutely no difference to them because they're going for glory, right? It makes sense. It's one-dimensional. But there is a flip side to that coin that we're going to discuss tonight, and that is that if you've got three parties, let's use the example of the Conservatives and Restore and Reform. If all three of them put a candidate up and each three have a loyal following in that constituency, and they all put their best soldiers, which is what they would do, up, and Labour put their best candidate up, the question becomes, are we all going for glory, or do we want to stop, with that combined power, do we want to stop the rise of another candidate? And in a first past the post system, you do that by returning the most amount of votes to a candidate. So splitting of the vote is something that is very, very real. But, Patriots, and this is so important, you will hear endlessly that there's no such thing as splitting of the vote. Endlessly. It is simply not true. It is statistically and scientifically proven that, of course, splitting the vote is a thing. And we're going to talk more and more about that this evening. But that basically sets the tone. And hopefully, if this makes sense, please go on to evangelize your brothers and sisters, because the reason why tonight is so important that we talk about Makerfield after Runcorn, after Gorton and Denton, is that if it goes wrong, and we're going to talk about who could make it go wrong, etc. If it goes wrong, we're talking about facilitating the insertion of a guy like Andy Burnham, who is part of the progressive order, which is far left in orientation. We're talking about the right facilitating the insertion of a guy like Andy Burnham into the Labour Party to become Prime Minister. So it's not a by-election, as in, yeah, God forbid, someone's passed on or they've had to retire from being a member of Parliament because they're ill. The guy standing down is doing so that Andy Burnham can be sanctioned by the Labour Council, which is kind of thing has happened. He's got the blessing to stand so that he's back in as a member of Parliament. Guy's got a really long political career, to stand back in, throw his hat into the ring, and if he wins, he then is a member of Parliament. And if there's a leadership contest, Andy Burnham would, if the rumours are true, and we've been following this very closely, it's very likely that he would put himself forward to become leader. Then the Labour, no different from what the Tories have done, I'm sure we've all been there as ex-Tories, the Labour have to do the internal voting, etc. And then there's a very real chance that a man like Andy Burnham could become Prime Minister. Now, number one, for those of you who have, it's difficult to explain this, but in life there are some lessons that never leave you. It's better the devil you know than the one that you don't. So everyone's thinking we've got to get rid of Starmer, but what if the next thing is even worse? That's why I do what I do, and that's why we as a team lead the charge to reinstate Christianity back into the heart of government, because we have decreed and declared as a party, and in terms of our loyal following, our support base and our members, we have decreed and declared that there is only one saviour, there is only one hope left for Britain, and that is for us to turn back to God and to his church. And Britain is undergoing a Christian revival, but it doesn't change like that, doesn't happen overnight. It's no coincidence that I'm 20 to 25 years junior, age-wise, of guys like Farage and Lowe, for example. Because this is the battle for Britain's soul, and it's not over until the bell's rung. So whereas Makerfield is, everyone says that each by-election that comes and goes, if it's high profile for whatever reason, is like the by-election. This actually is, though, because of the likes of Andy Burnham getting in essentially through the back door, which is another conversation altogether. And why, in the case of standing a candidate in Makerfield, this is not even remotely interesting to UKIP, because we already know pretty much now what's going to happen in 29, which means that we must continue our work, pulling the centre over to the right, but not just the conservative right, but the Christian nationalist right. And that puts our attention further down the line, like, for example, 2034. But there's so much that can happen between now and then, guys. We will begin. Now, first off, the constituency profile of Makerfield. The demographics, guys, predominantly white, British, skilled working class, historically shaped by industry and coal mining. For those of you that are from the north or a family in the north, this is the same sort of story over and over again. Very honest part of the world, very fun part of the world. And for those of you that live in the south, it is a stark contrast when you go to these places. It really does feel like, depending on which part that you go into, of course, it really does feel like Britain. So let's talk about the electorate. So right now, myself, you guys, you're sat in a house, right, in a ward. And that ward there are lots of different wards, and those wards make up a constituency. And the constituency in Makerfield is made up of between 73,000 and 76,000. Like a lot of what we call Labour heartland, red wall, old Labour seats. Traditionally, if it was red, it was red. I think that you could argue if it was blue, it was blue. That's very much different now. We're going to talk about that. But I think with red, it really was that. If it was red, it pretty much stayed red. whereas blue could be susceptible to change, ironically, and susceptible to the progressive order. Hence why the yellows have done very well, the Lib Dems, that is, in a lot of blue seats that were formerly blue, rather, over the last 10 years. Now, Makerfield is considered to be one of Labour's safest seats. Labour won the seat in 2024. Keir Starmer returned a supermajority, but that supermajority was returned by definition of the Tories and Reform going at it, refusing to do a deal. And you can fact check this, but the vote got split in like 72 constituencies, okay? And Starmer's majority, I don't have the numbers. In fact, I might actually have them here from a previous interview, but it was 403. So an overwhelming majority compared even with Boris. So splitting of the vote in 2024 definitely did happen between Reform and Tories, who were very, very similar, and a loyal Tory following voting Tory, and a loyal Reform following voting Reform. So Labour won the seat in 2024, and point being, Reform came in second place, which we know they did very well. Okay, they returned 4 MPs or whatever it was, 4, 5. No, it was 4, I think. But they came second place in an awful lot of seats. But that by definition was the splitting of the vote with the Tories, which gave Labour their supermajority, which has been absolutely beyond devastating under Starmer's rule. So Labour won the seat in 2024 in Makerfield. Reform came in second. The local election results in 2026, those have just been and gone, guys, saw a huge surge in Reform. It was predicted. We saw it happen. Massive. It's clearly Reform, ground game, local level, and at the national level are on track to do something historic in 2029. We didn't know that a year ago. We do know that that's a possibility now. Again, not for it, not against it, just speaking neutrally. In terms of the key points about this by-election, the election was triggered after Labour MP Josh Simmons stepped down to allow Andy Burnham to return to Parliament. So, guys, this is a huge debate in politics. If you become an MP and you decide to step, I mean, obviously, if God forbid you pass, if you die, then obviously a by-election is triggered, right? But if you leave your post, in the case of Josh Simmons, he's decided he's stepping down, but he's doing that deliberately to trigger a by-election because he has the right to do that. But he's doing that so that Andy Burnham can stand, right? And this is to do with when people talk about MPs crossing the floor and switching parties, by definition, that should trigger a by-election. There's lots of questions around this stuff as well. Just as a side note, if that's of interest to any of you at all, it stinks. I don't like it at all. But it's kind of, that's politics and that's kind of democracy. But yeah, there's a little story behind that. So this Josh Simmons character, he's stepping down. So what's that? 85 grand a year salary. You're a member of Parliament. It's one of the most prestigious seats in the House. I think he's a young guy as well, and he's stepping down. So I'm guessing that Labour have offered him some sort of deal somewhere. So it'd be interesting to find out where he ends up and doing it in what capacity, with what title, and what salary as well. Kemi Badenoch has confirmed the Conservatives will stand, and that the candidate is yet to be announced. Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is one of your devout Tories, JRM, he has suggested, and this was yesterday, breaking news, that the Conservatives should cooperate with Reform UK to stop Andy Burnham and Labour winning the seat. Now, if I have when I've introed the start of this session, guys, if I can talk about splitting the vote theoretically, and a guy as qualified, not saying I'm his biggest fan, but a guy as qualified as Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is a devout Tory, has openly put a statement out saying, essentially, Kemi, for the love of God, don't stand, just back Reform on this, because it's not because we like Reform or because we're backing Reform, but because we're trying to block Andy Burnham from winning the seat. So when you stand a candidate down, you can option one is you stand a candidate down and that's it. You don't say anything, you don't do anything, that's all you do. But when you stand a candidate down, by definition, you can then say, right, we are standing down, but here's why. And here's what we're going to stop a guy like Andy Burnham from winning, because we know Reform, who have got them, going back to the chat about momentum and about pace and urgency and about pecking order, and it could be anything, could be funding, could be anything. We see that chart, that again, it could be to do with polling. We see, if you're Kemi, we see that Reform's candidate, we're going to come on to talk about, that's got the best chance of winning. If we come in, our loyal Tory following will vote for us, and it will take votes away from that Reform individual. So you can stand down as party leader. You can stand your candidate down, not say anything, but then that just looks odd. Why wouldn't you? Anyone can ask me whether we are standing or not, and I can tell you exactly whether we are or aren't, and give you the reasons as well. And most people understand that. But if you're Kemi and you're looking at a guy like Rupert Lowe, who's launched Restore, and a man like Nigel Farage, who's obviously running Reform, if you're Kemi, you're in a position now to listen to people like Jacob and a lot of other people and the polls and the lay of the land and reading the room and say, do you know what? We aren't going to stand, but more than that, here's why. And we're actually going to promote Reform. Kemi would put out a statement. Typically this would happen. You could even suggest some sort of collaboration as well. That's not unheard of, patriots. You don't just have to put a statement out. You could do all sorts to say we're standing down, not because we like Reform or Nigel or their candidate, but we're standing down because we want everyone to vote for Reform. So I want to explain this. If Kemi understands she's got a very, very loyal following, if someone just said I haven't got any audio going on, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, guys. Give me a chance to block people that are saying really weird things. Yeah, someone give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Okay. We will continue. So this is really important, guys. Kemi. If you are Kemi Badenoch right now, following on from what Jacob Rees-Mogg and so many other people will have said about not competing with Reform, let me tie this into what I said at the very start. If you're Kemi and you know you've got a loyal following, stats, membership stats, track record in Makerfield, again, Labour heartland, Tories have never done well there. We all know that the white British working class is desperately looking for a political solution outside of Labour, because Labour has betrayed its core voter base, the white working class, guys. So that's a bit of context for you now before we continue. The Labour traditional white working class voter is now looking for something else outside of Labour. So, and Kemi, that's exactly the solution that Kemi and her team, and indeed her party and her vision, should be providing. So Kemi can look at all the polling and all the stats, and she's got all of the tacticians and strategists around her to advise her. And she could say, there is not a hope of the Tories winning Makerfield. Like, no one's saying that. It's possible, but it's so unrealistic and unlikely because of Nigel Farage and because of Rupert Lowe. We are where we are, guys. I don't make the rules. So she has an opportunity to say we're standing down our candidate because we know that Nigel Farage's candidate, Reform's candidate, has a much better chance. So if she stands down and has a very loyal following, you with me so far, guys, in Makerfield, that's not enough. As a party leader, Brits that care about Britain, socially conservative Brits, talking about culture now, not about economics. Everyone knows the next general election is going to be one on immigration. Those people need to be told, her loyal following need to be told, you guys need to back Reform. That's what Kemi needs to do. So you stand down, as Jacob Rees-Mogg is saying, but you don't just stand down. You actually give the people what they want, which is to unite. Saying, listen, I've got 100. Kemi Badenoch's got 120 MPs or whatever it is. That she's the second most powerful person in politics right now, guys. Let's not forget that. They're still the opposition. And that's what needs to happen. And this is the suggestion. She says to Nigel, I'm going to stand my candidate down and I'm going to promote you and your candidate, even though we won't do business together and we don't like each other but we're going to put all that to one side and we're going to ensure that we throw everything at making sure Reform, for example, could use Restore as the example, make sure that candidate win. Okay, guys? So that's what Jacob Rees-Mogg is saying when he's come out with his statement yesterday. And he's not the only one to come out with that kind of rhetoric. The reality is that Andy Burnham, the Labour candidate, is a high-profile politician who's got a really long career as mayor, as member of parliament, as all these other positions. Now, moving on. The Green Party is going to stand a candidate, but apparently they're still in the selection process. Labour, old voting Labour, they are looking for a new solution. And they're looking towards the Tories, and they're saying, what's the point in you when we've got Reform and now Restore? That they're looking at the Greens, and the progressive Labour voter who's looking for a new home is going to go straight to the Greens, no stopping it. That's the progressive agenda that the Greens are offering. But the individual that is right-wing, that is socially conservative, they're now looking at Reform and Restore. And that's where this show tonight is building towards Patriots. So the Greens stand for progressivism, which is all of your far left totalitarianism. It's just far left. It's just a socialist. It's just the dream socialist model, basically. And you know some of Zach Polanski's policies, and you're aware of the radical trans lobby and all these other elements, and it's abortion on tap, and what they'll do is the Greens, they'll call it freedom, choice, and rights. They're obsessed with freedom, choice, and rights. But it's not freedom, choice, and rights that you want. It's not the good stuff. It's the really unholy stuff as well. So the Greens are going to stand, but we don't know who the candidate is. The mainstream media will obviously be treating this as a test of whether Labour is losing its working class northern voters. Well, we all know that Labour is losing its northern working class voters. We already know that market is what every socially conservative right-wing party is seeking. Between myself, Nigel, Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, of course we are. Absolutely we are. Are we, with our policies, going to win in yellow constituencies or blue constituencies or green constituencies? It's just so unlikely, because those people are subscribed to the progressive agenda. Their ideology is progressive. They don't care whether it's socialist or communist in orientation or Marxist. They don't care about any of that, as long as it serves them, their bank balance, and it's got some sort of green attached to it, some sort of green agenda or green platform, for example. I don't know, it just makes them feel good about themselves. It's truly bizarre. So the right-wing party, the coalition, if you like, on the right, that would be nice. We all want the old Labour, their vote, because they're politically homeless and they're a huge voter base. So the Conservatives are going to be put under pressure now by Labour and Reform due to risk of being pushed out, obviously. Going back to Andy Burnham, high-profile guy, high-profile Labour figure, national profile, and seen as a potential future leader for Labour, as a contender, Now, the candidates. Reform UK are putting forward a guy called Robert Kenyon. He's about 40 years old, described as a local plumber, former army reservist, reportedly holding the rank of Lance Corporal, previously worked in NHS Lancashire as a technician, ran in the 2024 general election. He came second, so he's got some experience. He's been through the mill, knows what he's in for. He was elected in May 2026, just gone, as a Reform councillor, so he's clearly dedicated to politics. That's great. And he's got some experience as being a councillor. This is in Bryn with Ashton in Makerfield, North on Wigan's Council. He's from a working class background, raised by a single parent, described in a recent interview about, he's been asked about receiving free school meals. How do we feel about free school meals? Anyway, that's not for tonight. Restore Britain are putting forward Rebecca Shepherd. Now, Rebecca's an unknown. She's an absolute unknown. So I've got questions to Restore about this individual. Again, neutral. She's an unknown. Rupert is now high profile. He's a member of parliament. He's connected in the business and sporting world. And when you have a political party, it is all about attracting talent, guys. Celebrity talent, A-lister talent. At the moment, you got Sharon Osbourne and Duncan Bannatyne, and they are two very high-profile individuals who have made it very clear. Obviously, you got Jeremy Clarkson as well, but do you see where I'm going with this? Duncan Bannatyne, we're going to go on and talk about his tweet earlier today. He's literally going to back Andy Burnham the other day, and he said it, and then he's found out that Andy's obviously nuts, and he believes that men should be allowed into women's spaces. We're going to come on to talk about this, and he's put out a statement saying, "I'm pulling my support." I mean, this is transformational, guys. This is absolutely seismic. In this day and age, you can have multi-millionaires, guys like Duncan Bannatyne, who can just jump on X and be like, "Yeah, I'm supporting this guy." Then 5 minutes later, "No, I'm not. I'm supporting this guy." And of course, Duncan is watching the parties and the leaders, what they do and don't do. And I can't remember when it happened, but I think that him and Elon did the same thing with Nigel Farage and the Reform outfit. And I think Duncan's just backed Restore this afternoon, Rupert's outfit. So Rupert's got a lot of profile. And again, it's not about, I'm not saying putting celebrities in place, but this by-election, and we're going to come on to talk about this, but I'm going to start linking these points up. If you're Rupert, you cannot put a candidate forward against the Nigel Farage industrial war complex and lose. You cannot lose, Rupert, right? So we're going to go on to talk more about the going for glory, going for gold, going for glory, grab your nuts model. We're going to I like that model. We're going to go and talk about that a little bit more. But you can't lose. And he's putting in a woman called Rebecca Shepherd, 53 years old, described as a local businesswoman. It doesn't matter what she's involved in, and I'm sure she's lovely. Again, neutral. Described as someone who has lived in the Wigan borough most of her adult life. Okay, great. So she's local. That's brilliant. You know about parachuting in, when people are parachuted into other areas? Hey, look, it can work. Richard Tice, Boston and Skegness. Nigel Farage, Clacton. It works. Don't knock it. But people like it when they're from the area, when they're local. She's worked through a community interest company connected to SEND, which stands for Special Educational Needs and Disabilities, which is a big topic at the moment. It's trending. Anyway, that's it. Now, there's an interview with her on X, guys, which you can find because Restore have done it and they've shared it, right? Now, this is not me being nasty about Rebecca, but we're in the fight for Britain's soul, and we say things like we're sort of sick of the political elite, the liberal political elite. We use these words often, these phrases very often. I'm of a different opinion. The political liberal elite, yeah, they've got to go. The establishment class, the political class, right? We always say this. I want a better class of politician. I want a better class of politician. I want to see devout, patriotic, unapologetically right-wing, socially conservative, Christian nationalists in Parliament. That's what I want to see personally. We're all repentant, unworthy sinners, but that's what I want to see. I want to see something different. I hope that makes sense, guys. And when I watched that interview, there was nothing different. absolutely nothing different. Is a designated interview with Restore, with Restore people, shall we say, and it's gone on Restore's channel, and I was bored. I'm looking for passion. I'm looking for passion, and I'm looking for charisma, and I'm looking for fight, and I didn't see it. But again, maybe I'm completely maybe I'm being completely unreasonable. Maybe she's completely charismatic, enigmatic, and but I want to see that. I want to see that. So anyway, Andy Burnham, Labour. So that's Reform and Restore and Labour and Reform and Restore's candidate, Andy Burnham. Now, for those of you that don't know, if you're on the patriotic scene and you go up north and you speak to patriots about Andy Burnham to get some sort of feedback, he is universally despised as one of those individuals who was at one point through the timeline of the grooming gang scandal coming to light. The accusation, the allegation is that he was in various positions of political power, who, along with so many other officials. And remember, guys, the whole campaign behind Justice for the Girls is to make sure that the people that try to cover it up and who looking away and turning a blind eye is all part of it. So the people who actually deliberately tried to cover it up because they were Pakistani men and because of diversity, inclusion, and equality, the whole thing's just sickening. It's absolutely vile. But these girls were targeted because they were white. They were seen as kuffar. We know that. And we know that those communities of those individuals, you can come at the religious angle if you want, or the cultural angle. I don't care. And this is, again, flagship policy for us. These people were here, and the media still has the gall to call them British Pakistani. Absolutely not. This is where we've gone so horribly. No, they were Pakistani men, whether it's the cultural angle that you want to get on or the religious angle. That those often get confused, and it doesn't help us at all. The girls were earmarked specifically because of the color of their skin and the fact that they white, Christian, British, and they were seen as kuffar. And we want to know where the police officers, the mayors, the officials, the constables, the governors, we want to know where these people were whilst this was happening in our northern mill towns, because people knew, 100% they knew. Where were they? Those police constables that clocked off one evening knowing they could have done something. No, anything. Same deal with Axel Ruda-Cabana as well. Absolutely someone knew. Of course they did. 100%. This young lad, God rest his soul, Henry Noack in Southampton. The police officers, the reports coming out of the court case now, they were cuffing him whilst he was bleeding out. Maybe he was wearing layers. I don't know what time of year it was, but what the weather was. Maybe he was wearing layers. Even when it's hot, people still wear jumpers and hoodies and coats and whatnot. And if you're bleeding out, you can't necessarily see it. It was dark, etc. We now know that the police were more interested in arresting him than saving his life because of an allegation of racism. So we know that this kind of, there aren't words to describe it really, utter madness exists, whereby there is such a systemic institutional problem, goes right to the very heart of government and our police force, which should be beating as one. It's all about upholding the law, and we know that that's been completely bastardized and placed in jeopardy by progressive agendas, far left in orientation, socialist, Marxist, commie, by progressive agendas. That's the key thing, guys. We're conservatives. We sit on the right. We're not on the far right. We sit on the right, unapologetically. We're not on the center right. We're not in the middle. We're on the right. Completely reject the far right. We sit on the right. Progressive agendas, anything left of center. Here's your middle ground, your centrist liberal nonsense, stand for everything, stand for nothing, sit on the fence types, and everything to the left of that, the progressive agenda. So Andy Burnham, not liked in conservative circles, not one little bit. Scandals in Rochdale, Oldham, and other towns exposed child sexual exploitations over many years. Victims and campaigners have accused the police, council, and social services of ignoring warnings and failing vulnerable girls. I'm sure you all know repeatedly. Andy Burnham commissioned reviews into failures in Greater Manchester after becoming mayor in 2017. So for those of you that didn't know, Andy Burnham became mayor of Manchester in 2017, which means if you are going to assume that role, you are going to be, especially coming up to 10 years ago, wow, you are going to be up to your neck in it with regards to producing inquiries, fact finding, holding people to account. That's the hill you die on. You become a man like him in a position like that at that time. You're voluntarily accepting that that's the hill you die on. Reviews found serious institutional failings, poor safeguarding, and failures to listen to victims, all the usual stuff. And we've just gone through it in quite extensive detail. It is absolutely disgusting. It is totally gruesome. And in the case of myself, my team, and my party, we are designating the rest of our lives to achieving justice, not just for Britain, but for our girls. Critics argued the inquiries were too weak because they were non-statutory and could not compel witnesses or documents. Guys, we've heard this over and over and over and over again. One man can't produce the result here. There has to be we all know there has to be a system-wide effort to the people that to bring to justice the people that tried to cover it up, which is bringing the criminals to justice, to book. That's one thing, but the people that deliberately turned away and the people who tried to cover it up, the latter is obviously far worse. Covering it up deliberately that's more heinous than turning the other way. If you deliberately tried to cover it up, imagine a constable leaving the station one night knowing that he could have driven with his partner or maybe by himself into that nest of vipers, and he knew about that kebab store and he knew what was going on up there. He'd been told all these reports. He could have gone in there and done something, right? But then you take backup with you. But then maybe they thought that there would be some sort of riot, and they were told, look, just leave it well enough alone. And these men are going home these police officers are going home these councillors, because the councillors all got written to, by the way. It's called civic action. And they knew that something might be going on. So they didn't cover it up, but they knew something might be going on. They turned a blind eye. That has to be brought to justice, not just the people that tried to cover it up. That's rot in jail forever. That's as serious as it gets, right? That's, alongside the criminality itself, but the people that turned a blind eye. Many perpetrators have been convicted and jailed, as you all know, with some specifically Rochdale offenders receiving sentences of 25 to 30 years. Unacceptable, but I'm not a judge or jury. You know our position when it comes to interfering with minors, male or female. We need to seriously consider the death penalty, mainly for setting a precedent. But this is about Rochdale right now. About the northern towns where justice got served in inverted commas. Survivors and campaigners say accountability largely fell on perpetrators rather than the authorities that failed the victim. So I think I've explained that crystal in relation to that last point, that if the victims now are saying, right, well, so criminality wise, that may have been dealt with, but what about the people that covered it up? Separate point. The people that turned a blind eye. Two separate areas. And Justice for Britain means that both those areas, so in total there's three. There's the criminality, the people that tried to cover it up, and then there's the people that looked the other way. Andy Burnham on transgenderism. A resurfaced 2022 video shows Andy Burnham discussing men pretending to be women using women's toilets. He says that allowing trans women, so men, to use the female toilets is a minority view to oppose. What he's saying is that it's not really a big deal in the context of a man who's choosing to dress as a woman, using it being a problem, him using a female-only bathroom, a female bathroom. It's a female bathroom. It's female only. You wouldn't dare. If you were a man, you wouldn't dare go into a female bathroom. A 2025 YouGov survey found British opinion has become increasingly skeptical of transgender rights, with 55% saying allowing trans women into female-only spaces presents a genuine risk of harm to women, while 74% oppose trans women competing in women's sports. Guys, we all know what's what with regard to this. Burnham has also warned against turning the issue into a culture war between women's rights and trans rights. Yes, because again, drum roll, he's part of the progressive agenda. So the last thing he wants is the spotlight being over where the mask slips off of liberals and we see the Marxist, whether they know they're Marxist or not, that's a fun conversation. Where the mask slips is on stuff like this. Guy like Andy Burnham, again, he's not going to want to pick a side there, right? Because he knows the vast majority of people, everyone would say, if you're a man and you dress like a woman, you're still a man and you're not going in a female space. But we also know the political correctness and the liberalism that covers Britain in darkness means that there is an awful lot of people who would, for the sake of keeping the peace and just live and let live, and if you're over 18 and you're consenting adults, then whatever, all of that liberal BS that so many generations, including mine, have been raised with, that argument sits with a guy like Burnham and his following, right? So everyone knows it's BS, but also political correctness says, oh, just go with it, because they're not harming anyone, are they? Well, yeah, they are, actually, and you're putting women at risk. So why would you invite the rape? Why would you invite the pervert? Why would you invite the murder? You wouldn't, would you? You set boundaries. It's called ethics, values, cultural norms. If you're a bloke dressed like a woman and you walk into a female bathroom, you will be considered under my government a sexual predator. You will be arrested and charged. Doesn't take long to explain, patriots. The video that I mentioned probably about 5 minutes ago now, that's all available online, guys. Andy Burnham has done what Starmer and so many other progressives have done, which is to say, we hear you to conservatives, but we also hear you to progressives. So we don't really want to talk about it. But yes, ultimately, if you're a bloke and you dress as a woman, regardless of whether you've had surgery or not, you should essentially have rights. And the conservative side, my party's side, leading the charge says, no, you have rights as a man. You don't have rights as a woman because you're a man dressed as a woman and you have mental health problems and you need help for that. Now, going back to Duncan Bannatyne, very importantly, as I mentioned earlier, guys, and I'll quote, Duncan Bannatyne has endorsed Restore Britain in the Makerfield parliamentary by-election after Andy Burnham's transgender 2022 video resurfaced. So there's a story to tell there, guys. A guy like Duncan Bannatyne, who's got bigger fish to fry than politics, I'm guessing, decided, not rapidly, but he backed Andy Burnham publicly. That's such a huge endorsement. I can't wait, Duncan, for you to back me, but we're going to get there, my friend. We're going to get there. But he did on X and whatever other platforms. Maybe it was just X, but he backed Andy Burnham. That's quite the endorsement. That's now been pulled because of a video about Andy just being really weak and lily-livered, and it's just pathetic to watch. And him and Starmer, look, they look alike, they sound alike, it's the same BS over and over again. Questions about transgenderism, it's mental illness, these people need help. A man dressing up as a woman, going into a female space, arrested, charged, and potentially locked up for the sake of his own good and the general public. I can do it in under 10 seconds. Whereas this video is just this wishy-washy. Yeah, I get that side, but I also get... No, you know? Anyway, that's enough. Oh, it's nauseating talking about anything to do with those proponents of the progressive agenda. And I'll remind you, patriots, the progressive agenda once upon a time under old Labour was about rights, freedom, and choice. Very different times where potentially things needed to be looked at and change. I know you're all shocked. I'm not unreasonable. Things needed to, again, there are some examples, but very few. But ultimately, us conservatives, blue-blooded conservatives, we are traditionalists. We sit on the right whilst rejecting far right or what's called fascistic politics. We do sit on the right, which is a total rejection of progressivism. But yes, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, there were some things that were maybe changed because the left progressive agenda wants to end discrimination, basically. And you could argue that there was some discrimination in certain directions towards certain people. And, you need to have a bit of a conversation about that. But all in all, we were just fine as we were. And a homogenous working society with its roots firmly in Christianity and traditional gender roles is going to produce the best and most fruitful outcomes to a society, culturally and economically, by the way. That's my forecast. I stand by it. And we will, by the grace of God, take power one day, patriots. Looking at the 10 to 15-year plan, Rome wasn't built in a day. Christian nationalism, no excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. But that leads us to wrap up talking about Andy Burnham, Labour constituent, Makerfield constituency candidate, the chap who reforms candidate, whose name I can never remember, even though I'm saying it all day, every day at the moment, and Restore, the new party, Rupert Lowe's Restore party, putting forward, apparently I can remember her name, Rebecca. What was it? Yeah. Robert Kenyon. So I'll go back to the start and then I'll conclude, guys. So if you're Rupert Lowe, if you're Restore, if you are one of Rupert's team members, if you are in the Rupert Lowe firm, and I know all of those guys, bar one, you are going for the grab your nuts model. You are going for the go for gold, go for glory, and hang the consequences model. British steel, stiff upper lip. We don't care about the competition. We're not asking, we're telling. All of the stuff you've seen me, my team, thanks be to God, the rhetoric, our policies, street level, actions and behavior, demonstrably, you've seen it. We did it first. We're not asking, we're telling, we're taking our country back. So Lowe is going with that model. He's been watching, he's been observing, he's going to go with that model. Now, patriots, that is absolutely fantastic. I love the moxie. I love the style. I love the courage. But here's the thing about courage and bravery. When your army is absolutely tiny and the enemy, which is the progressive ideology, patriots, when your socially conservative right-wing army, how many of us are actually registered to vote? How many of us actually turn out? How many of us actually get involved in party politics? The right doesn't have the trade unions that Labour, the progressive left, have. They don't have the organisation. The Socialist Worker Party can put together, with the trade unions, marches for Palestine 2,500 miles away, month after month, year after year, pulling hundreds of thousands dedicated pretty much without blinking. The picket lines, the banners, the placards, the campaigners for freedom, rights and choice. Not the patriotic, socially conservative types, but the end discrimination, end apartheid, end colonization, end the genocide. Again, some of this stuff is 99% of it is all BS, right? They all just drift towards this socialist outcome economically and culturally, which brings everyone down to the lowest common denominator. And as for the champagne socialists, they feel guilty about their lives and their wealth and their gated communities. So, of course, it's time to, look after everyone else whilst pulling the ladder up behind them, who did incredibly well off of free market economics and probably live very socially conservative lives. So you've got the lower end of the socialists. These people, how best to describe them? They're very angry at life. Mum and dad did a bad job with them, and they're very angry at life. And then, of course, you've got your champagne socialists. They're just at different ends of the spectrum, wealth-wise, but ultimately stand for the same principles, which in the age of liberalism on steroids is essentially total individualism, which is the end goal of Marxism, which is complete and utter individualism, i.e. individualism says, I am the God. I want all the freedom, all the rights, all the choice, and I deserve all of that. Well, then that means then that you have the Socialist Worker Party and the left-wingers turning up to oppose mothers and fathers at protests where mothers and fathers are concerned about illegal immigration, and then the socialists get to call them Nazis because they're restricting the rights, freedom and choice. Rights, freedom and choice. Say it with me, patriots. Rights, freedom and choice. Remember, that's what it's all about. We're infringing on the rights, freedom and choice of the immigrant who just wants a better life. So do you see how there's never going to be a marriage? There'll never be cohesion, societal cohesion. There'll never be a truce ever between the progressive model and the conservative model, the traditional model. They absolutely do not work, patriots, in any way. They are chalk and cheese. That's why we say we're in the battle for Britain's soul. Interesting how often you hear mainstream media pundits and newly elected party leaders using that phrase now. Thanks be to God. So, as I said, patriots, start going back to the start and then concluding. If Kemi Badenoch puts forward a candidate, and for those of you that don't know, I said at the beginning a little bit about wards and constituencies. In the case of Makerfield, it's got about 75,000 people in it. Most constituencies have got about 50,000. Some are larger, some are smaller, but you get the idea. There's around 3.5 to 4,500 people in a ward. Those wards make up the constituency. The constituency has a member of parliament. That member of parliament then speaks for you in parliament, okay? That's one thing of itself. That's one goal. I mean, it's great, right? Like, that's our system. But on its own, let's say Rupert's candidate, Rebecca, wins. There'll be 2 of them. You know, Nigel in 24, there was 4 of them. Now there's 9 of them. But you can't make decisions. You get outvoted. You don't run a government. You're not the majority. You're not even in the opposition, by the way. You're just in there, right? So again, not slating it. Great. So if Kemi puts forward, Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Conservatives, guys, and I will leave you with this. If she puts forward a candidate, the average in terms of vote share and who's registered to vote and who turns out, the lead candidate in a high-profile by-election, or indeed a high-profile candidate in a high-profile constituency, regardless of a general election or a by-election, the winner could potentially very easily win with something like 25,000 votes. And I'm going to use that number as an example. Andy Burnham, high-profile, Labour, could win, bearing in mind it's about getting him into power, not just into Parliament, but so he can become an MP, so he can run to be leader of Labour, to be Prime Minister of this country. So this by-election is as high profile as it gets. We all want Starmer out. But more than that, guys, we don't want Starmer out. Now, bear with me. We don't want Starmer out to put in something slightly better, slightly further to the centre. We've had all that under the Blair years, and it was absolutely awful. Remember, it's liberalism, right? Open borders. It's the same. It's still Marxism. It's still nonsense, right? Freedom, rights, choice on steroids. What good is it? We want Starmer out so badly. What good is it if we take Starmer out and we put in Streeting, Rayner, Burnham? What difference does it make, guys? Better the devil you know than the one that you don't. You never know. The guy could start to moderate. If tomorrow Starmer said, I'm going to close the borders and deploy the military and I'm going to end illegal immigration, we'd all be fine with him. We'd still remember that the guy is hugely problematic and being very polite about it and diplomatic about it. So what's the point in removing Starmer? Labour have got a supermajority, guys. So here we go. Kemi Badenoch doesn't take the advice and she puts forward her top soldier. And that top soldier gets 9,000 votes. Bearing in mind, you and I, most people have no idea who MPs are, right? Like, and there's a lot of them. We don't know. Restore's leading candidate, Rupert can't get this wrong, Rebecca Shepherd. No one knows who she is. Yeah, if she's known locally, that's great. But you want a national profile, do you not? Surely you do. Does it make sense now, guys? There's a reason why Matt Goodwin was put forward by Nigel in the Gorton and Denton by-election, right? This is Rupert cannot lose this election. He's putting forward a candidate. He can't lose the election. So if Kemi, again, big if she puts forward a superstar soldier and he gets 9,000 votes, I'm just going to use the Andy Burnham, imagine it, 25,000 votes. Kemi gets 9,000. You with me? That's still, in Labour heartland and all the aforementioned, a blue returning 9,000 votes. That's still, and also it's a by-election. So whenever it happens, it's not a general election. So I could start campaigning in a seat right now, right? So they do, to an extent, have limited time. If Kemi's superstar candidate returns 9,000 votes and Nigel's reforms Robert, I got his name right. Robert returns 9,000 votes. These are good results, by the way, guys. They might not win, but I think that's great. Have you ever stood for election? I am going to face this chalice. I don't know how many I'm going to get. Of course, I'm going to win. Quick prayer. But you do see my point, guys. 9,000 votes. Rebecca Shepherd. Who is she? But if she got 9,000 votes, first ever election, that's fantastic. So Kemi, she gets 9,000 votes. Reform's candidate, Robert, he gets 9,000 votes. And Restore's Rebecca gets 9,000 votes. No one would look at that and go, that's absolutely awful. They'd go, it's 9,000 votes. It's better than 0, which, depending on which election that you look at, guys, it's locally, some people get 0 or 2 or 3. Like it can get really, really quite painful. So imagine, guys, I use the word if, so bear with me. What if Andy Burnham won with 25,000 votes, which is not out of the realms of possibility? Again, the aforementioned, the white working class, skilled white working class bloc in Makerfield are desperately looking for a new leader and a new political vision. Historically, it's all been Labour, but now they're saying Nigel's the guy. Nigel's got the TikTok account. He's the champion of the working class. So they go to Reform. But you've got Restore. And you've got Rupert Lowe declaring war on Nigel Farage. And so the thousands of people that will go to vote will look at that Reform box and they'll look at the Restore box. And the vast majority of people, again, if you've tuned in from later than the start of this video, this show, guys, this won't make as much sense as if you've been there from the very beginning. But, and this can only be explained in an hour-long show, by the way, that individual, travel with me to the ballot box. 25-year-old guy works on a building site. What? Backbone of Britain, right? He's going to see Reform. He's going to see Restore. Kemi's nuts for standing. That's just ridiculous. That's just pride. Nonsense, right? As I said, polling, stats, Labour heartland, nonsense. Jacob Rees-Mogg is right. She should stand down, and not only stand down, but do what I would do. Make a massive fuss about it, saying we're going to help, support in any way, shape or form. We're going to back a horse. But she's out saying that she'd never do a deal with Nigel Farage. Oh, well, that's great. So you'll never do a deal with Nigel Farage. What about Britain? Like, how selfish is that? So travel with me. Let's call him Mr. X, 25-year-old builder. Patriotic, socially conservative, politically homeless. Traditionally, him and his family for generations vote Labour. Now Nigel's the new saviour for the working class. There's a box for Restore. Rebecca. Rupert Lowe makes all these noises online. Massive online profile. Elon Musk's new best mate sees Restore, sees Reform. His head is going to say, Restore's really young. It's really new. Again, nothing against Rupert or Restore, but he's going to look at that and go, I've got to make a choice. And this is the point, Patriots. He will be Mr. X. He'll be representative of so many people that potentially want to vote for Rupert and for Restore. Apologies. Vote for Restore and Rupert's candidate, Rebecca. And I'm sure she's lovely. But the head for so many people in Makerfield, when the election happens, will see that Reform box, understand that they are the new Tory party. But if we could wave a magic wand and have Nigel in as PM tomorrow, and let's start going back to my previous point about what's the point in removing Starmer, it's the progressive agenda that Streeting, Rayner and Burnham all serve as their overlord. If tomorrow I could wave a magic wand and put in Nigel as PM, every single patriot, social conservative, Christian nationalist would say, do it. They'd say, do it. No matter the vitriol against Nigel and some of the nonsense he's come out with and some of the liberalism and some of this other stuff, it's unpalatable. They would, guys. They would. So travel with me. Mr. X, in the box, by-election, Makerfield, Restore, Rebecca, Reform, Robert. So many R's. What's going on? His head, and we can take this as a template, nothing against Rebecca and nothing against Restore. He will go, Reform have got the momentum. Nigel's got the momentum. So many people who are socially conservative, right-wingers and or Christian nationalists don't want Nigel in power, don't want to reward Nigel, don't want to reward reform. You will take it. Going back to the very first point I made starting the show, we are at war. We're fighting for Britain's soul. When your army is tiny, Kemi's got 120 MPs and they're fairly useless. And what are they, radically right-wing? But doesn't make any sense because Tories are doing awful in the polls. And when was the last time you saw a face to camera or any kind of viral clip from anyone in the Tory party so we actually knew who they were? You'd be doing that all day, every day. If you were a right winger in the Tory party, you'd be doing face to cameras all day, every day, blowing your profile up, saying we're sending them home. And then quoting Nick Tenconi, because I was the first person to say that. But thanks be to God. So again, travel with me. All the aforementioned points. I believe the inertia of the voter in Makerfield, as much as they want to go to Restore and Restore under Rupert's leadership, I don't know who Rupert's successor is, but at his age, he needs to be naming a successor. So I don't know how that works. He's the main guy, right? So it's in its infancy. I think the mind of the voter will go, I desperately want to go with the horse with the most momentum. I desperately want Labour and Starmer gone, and I want to block Burnham. I will vote reform. There is so much weight there, regardless of how you feel or don't feel. In terms of 3D chess and in terms of splitting the vote, that is where the vast majority of mindsets will go to. Now, yes, it is, of course, very possible that if Rupert has the money, resource, leafleters, campaigners, and honestly, good best of luck to Rupert, like 100% best of luck to Rupert. I genuinely mean that. I have no skin in the game here other than Britain. Well, and I want to reinstate Christianity back into the heart of government, which we will do. I will do. As God is my witness. If he throws everything at it, and I mean everything, bearing in mind the timelines, come back with me. Kemi does 9,000 votes, and then Restores Rebecca does 20,000 votes. Again, she has no profile outside of Wigan. Is that correct? Is that fair? I don't know. Maybe 20,000 votes. Andy Burnham, 25,000 votes, and Reform get walloped by Restore. I hope you guys are remembering these numbers. And Reform gets walloped by Restore because we're all back in Restore, right? And everyone in Makerfield wants Restore. So Kemi does 9,000 votes, but that's a loyal Tory following, right? So those 9,000 votes, that would be Rupert's argument, right? Those are her votes, and they're never gonna go anywhere else. Well, that's not true, is it? Because in the box, the head and the inertia, as I've explained, and Andy Burnham does the 25,000 votes, and Restore's candidate Rebecca does 20,000 votes, which would be amazing. Still doesn't beat Andy Burnham's 25,000 votes. That just leaves Reform's Robert, who does, if Rebecca does 20,000 votes and Reform's Robert does 6,000 votes. Last time I checked, Patriots, 20,000 votes to Restore and 6,000 votes to Reform. I mean, these numbers aren't likely. They're just not likely, right? Reform are going to do much better than that, but just bear with me. The combined total of Restore and Reform votes will be 26,000 if it was going on one candidate. Again, whether it was Nigel's or Kemi's or Restore's, right? Rupert's. And Andy Burnham would lose. Andy Burnham would lose by 1,000 votes, and we would have either a Conservative or a Reform, Conservative, social, centre-right, whatever. And if Rupert is fielding candidates in line with what his team is saying online, then we'd have a right-winger. So whether it was Tory blue, teal, or a Reform teal, or Restore, I always think of them as being a grey colour. I don't know why. We would have that, Patriots. Does that make sense, guys? It can't be broken down any further than that. I'd need a whiteboard behind me in the numbers, but that's my forecast. I'll stand by it. So you can all listen to that and be like, okay, fine. So conclude it. Okay, Nigel Kemi, and Rupert must all sit in a room together. And when stuff like this comes up, Makerfield, Andy, high profile, all of the aforementioned, they must decide who's going to be the front runner. And then everyone else steps to one side. And then, of course, they instruct their following, the media, their soldiers in the area, you name it. They instruct them, get behind that candidate. Then, again, let's go back to the Andy Burnham 25,000 votes forecast. Imagine if all these numbers came out and then this got played back like as a clip. Then Andy Burnham, again, hypothetical, does 25,000 votes. But the three leaders, Nigel, Rupert, and Kemi, they've all, never forget how powerful Kemi still is with her MPs. Never forget that. She's in the opposition, British politics, British Parliament. All three of them decide whether it's going to be Kemi's candidate, reforms Robert, or restores Rebecca. They pick one. Toss for it. Doesn't matter. But they pick it. Everyone else stands down and they promote it. I don't believe aforementioned points, Labour heartland, disillusioned voters, working class looking for a separate, different new vision. I do not believe it would fail. I believe it would win. And then the three leaders could stand for a photo op and say, we're not friends. We're not the same party, but we will always put aside our differences for Britain. The country's happy. We've blocked Andy Burnham, who's part of the progressive ideology, which is far left in orientation. Liberals and Marxists will never call it that because it's freedom, rights, and choice. But we blocked a communist because all of the modern day left are part of the progressive agenda, which is Marxist in orientation. We've blocked a commie. We've got unity from the three key leaders. There are other leaders, myself being one of them. But the three key leaders at the moment, being a little bit lazy with my language there, they've shown unity. They've done the photo op, shaking hands. We don't like each other. Different ideologies, but we put our differences aside because we reject the progressive agenda, whether you're centre right or right. We reject the liberal to centre Marxist agenda. We've blocked a commie. You've got unity. We won't let Britain down. That's the story. That's your headline right there. That's the win. Is that going to happen? No. Why not? Because Rupert can't ever do business with Nigel ever again. Ever? Well, that's not in Britain's best interest. And people are going to turn around and they're going to say, Nigel and Zia did this to Rupert. Yeah. I've heard it all before. We're all men and business is business. And we're in the business of saving Britain. So I don't want to hear it. That vision that I have could happen. It's unprecedented and it's uncharted territory. And it could happen, but it's not going to happen because Kemi has out and out said, I'm not doing business with Nigel Farage. Rupert won't do business with Nigel Farage, which means that the only thing left is for Kemi to do business with Rupert. Rupert can't be seen to do business with Kemi because they're the Tory party, right? So have we seen any signs whatsoever that Restore will do business with Kemi? Not yet. Maybe that's something that will emerge. But I don't think that's going to do anything for Rupert and for Restore's PR. I really don't. So you say, what's the solution? And I can't have been clearer tonight, guys. The solution isn't probable because of pride, ego, vendettas, and personal gain. And I find that completely unacceptable. Which takes us to the closing point about this evening. This is not the last time we will speak about Makerfield. I wish Rupert all the very best. I wish Nigel all the very best. And I wish Kemi all the very best. Because if Kemi became PM tomorrow, that would be an outcome that the Patriots would much rather over Keir Starmer. But we're still nowhere near what we want. What we want is me as PM. What we want is my party in Premiership. What we want is justice for Britain. What we want is Christian nationalism. It's time for something new and different and something Britain's never had. But Kemi, Nigel, or Rupert as PM tomorrow, whilst we build our efforts towards 34 and beyond, Kemi, which is dangerously close to Keir in terms of the letters, that nearly came out. Kemi, Rupert and or Nigel, can we all agree with that, guys? If they were PM tomorrow, that would be a result, right? So we're all on the same page, guys. We aren't actually that disunited. We are united. But you will have people on the right, especially going for gold model, go for glory. There's no such thing as splitting the vote. That's what they'll tell you. Well, I pray that you're right. And my message to Rupert, because this has been one of the more enjoyable shows, some of them, I think this is hopefully been very informative and educational. This is something that I enjoy doing, Patriots. My message, which may well get to Rupert, is this. Rupert, you can't fail in this by-election. So if your mindset with your tacticians and your strategists around you is chuck in Rebecca, go back to the numbers I've used tonight, you basically what you do is you get your 20,000 votes. Andy Burnham's going to win on 25,000 votes. Again, guys, 75,000 in the constituency, but based on the numbers about who's registered to vote and vote share, just bear with me. These proportions could potentially be very accurate. Andy Burnham wins on 25,000. You, in the first major by-election, high profile, restores first test of power and testicular fortitude. Rebecca, God bless her. Don't know why I'm talking about like I know her, don't know her. She gets 20,000 votes and reforms Robert. Nigel's party get 9,000. You've smashed reform. You've made a dent in British politics. You've smashed reform. You've embarrassed reform, and you then use that as a showcase to the rest of the country. Well, we came second, and we got 20,000 votes. No, you'll have failed. But Patriots, I will wrap up now, but I'm going to re-emphasize that point. And this needs to be bookmarked. If Rupert wins, I love it. I'm going to smile because it's brilliant. It's British steel. And we all know Rupert. The guy's a lad, right? He's going for it, right? The guy doesn't lose. The guy's a winner. But if he's doing this, and I know a thing or two about tactical politics, strategic politics now, guys. I think you all know that. If him and his team with the stiff upper lip British steel are going, doesn't matter if we lose, as long as we beat reform, because guess what then? We can showcase that we're better than reform. We know it's a personal vendetta against Nigel, which is hugely problematic for me as a Christian nationalist. You want to set out on a journey of vengeance, first dig 2 graves. Britain is the concern. My childhood that I want other kids to have. Safe streets. I mean, the digital age has kind of scuppered that a bit, but safe streets. Let's start small. Safe streets, right? Guys, it's for Britain. It's my mission. It's for Britain. That's it. End of conversation. And I think Christianity is the cure. I think it's the solution, and I don't think I'm wrong. We know it's a personal vendetta against Nigel. So is it possible that Rupert is standing in Makerfield? He is standing to say, well, we'll decimate Nigel and reform, and then we're on our way, right? The momentum builds, okay, because we came second. Is it possible? I'm asking you, Patriots, is it possible? Am I wrong? Am I in the ballpark? Is that a possible strategy that's been put forward? Again, no slurs, no nastiness, just is it possible? Because if it's possible and I'm right and that happens and that vote does get split because people in that box, journey back with me to the ballot box of Mr. X, who's there going, restore, reform, and what I've said, my forecast is wrong, and he goes with restore. And everyone starts doing the restore box ticking stuff. Well, that's votes lost from reform to restore then, is it not? Because again, how do these people know which way to vote? First past the post system. Go for glory, right? No one knows. You don't know until the result comes in. So I think that in standing in Makerfield, we all know that that block vote that everyone's after could well reject the Greens, could well reject the Reds, and could well embrace reform. But by Rupert and his party Restore standing a candidate, that is either best interests at heart, we're going for gold, we're a political party, what are you going to do, bro? Or it's, if we lose, we've done a dent in reform. So we're just fighting on the right then. But you've put a full-blown Marxist, Keir's mate, into Parliament and into number 10. Now, I'm not saying for a second that that's the agenda, and I'm not saying that's the plan. I'm making you all, as I set out from the very start of this, I am asking you, please now, my brothers and sisters, to go away and evangelize your brothers and sisters, your concerned patriots, concerned parents at the school gate, in your networks, WhatsApp groups, dealer's choice. But take these talking points to them. I want all of Britain registered to vote. Socially conservative, patriotic Brexit voters make up half this country, 35 million as far as I'm concerned. And then obviously you've got people that aren't eligible to vote. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but there is an army of 20 million people. And then you've got the numbers of Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox. You have got at least 20, 25 million people in this country who are socially conservative, who have had enough, who want Labour gone and the establishment politicians gone, and who want change and who would happily back a Christian nationalist party. I want what is best for Britain, but the decision for a new party like Restore to stand a candidate like that in Makerfield is potentially an acid test for them. But it's an acid test that potentially harms Britain further. And you need to understand that. Again, no slur. I've said it several times and I will say it again. I wish Rupert's candidate, Rebecca, who I've spoken about like I know her, all the very best. But in an ideal world, Nigel, Kemi, and Rupert would all sit in a room, lock the doors, and agree who is the horse they're all going to back and not just stand down for, but actively promote. Secure a win. Knock Andy Burnham out the park. No more progressive politicians. The progressive ideology, patriots, is Marxism, and it is the enemy. I'm going. You guys have been great. I always try to keep it to an hour. Thank you. Anyone who's tuned in, a massive thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully it was useful. And please also, can we all pray for Kemi, Nigel, and Rupert? I mean that seriously, please, because what I've suggested is not out of the realms of possibility. It is something that can happen. And but it can only happen if pride, ego, revenge, vengeance, and self-gain is put to one side. And the public should be holding those three, the electorate, our people, should be holding those three to account minute by minute, hour by hour. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Blessed be the holy and undivided Trinity, now and forevermore. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Patriots, I see you again next week on Wednesday, 8 p.m., God willing.